Coming up on Network Africa, Kenya's Supreme Court hands victory to William Ruto, confirming his win in last month's presidential election. Reactions from both sides, the Ruto camp as the president-elect praises the work of the Electoral Commission, and from rival Raila Odinga, who challenged the results. Plus, 3 people dead from heavy floods in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Joke Rogers. Kenya's Supreme Court today put an end to speculation about who won the country's presidential election and if President-elect William Ruto can go on to be president. Hours ago, the Supreme Court rules that William Ruto was properly elected as the country's president, dismissing several petitions seeking to annul the results of the August 9 election. This comes weeks after political contender Raila Odinga showed with a truckload of evidence contesting the results announced by the Electoral Commission and William Ruto's acceptance. The Supreme Court said Ruto garnered 50.5% of the vote in the closely fought election. While the 8 petitions brought on by Odinga were dismissed, the court found some were based on forged documents and sensational information. Chief Justice Martha Koome said there was no credible evidence that the electronic voting transmission system had been tampered with by a middleman.
As a consequence, we declare the election of the first respondent as president-elect to be varied under Article 143 of the Constitution. This being a matter cutting across the public interest, we order that each party do bear their own costs. It is so ordered. And finally, the court has asked me to also acknowledge, although we'll do it in the long draft, the enormous contribution made by counsel in these proceedings, and also the orderly way the counsel, all the advocates and parties conducted themselves. They remained seated throughout the proceedings.
Meanwhile, the president-elect William Ruto will be sworn in next week as Kenya's 5th president. Shortly after the Supreme Court ruling, he spoke to supporters saying this marks the end of politics of deceit, betrayal, and commandship, adding, "We want the politics of Kenya of the future. Every leader must be judged on what they say, and what they say is what they do." He also says his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, will be treated well, telling supporters, "We will respect our president in his retirement. We are honorable people, we are not petty, and we are not jealous. He has done a good job, and he will have his place in the history of Kenya. Nobody should harbor anything against the president of Kenya." The president-elect says he will be calling on his rival candidates, Raila Odinga inclusive, so they can begin to contextualize how they are going to work together for the people. In the meantime, Ruto's challenger, Raila Odinga, was not in court today to listen to the verdict, but his lawyer was. James Orengo told reporters outside that he respected but disagreed with the Supreme Court's unanimous decision of upholding the August 9 election of William Ruto as president.
According to the law, we got to accept this decision as the law of the land. But I think it is a very ideological decision. I think there are a lot of what was said in the judgment, and we'll have time when that judgment comes out to put out a critique. But all it means is that in our jurisprudence, the petitioners will always have a big burden to carry when you have an electoral commission which is not open and transparent. The best way for this court to have made a decision was with the servers to be fully opened, and all the election materials be placed before the court.
Margot's name was not supposed to be on Form 34A. If at all he was involved in this election.
It's been a very, very engaging period, and we are thankful it has now ended. The time for court cases has ended. The time to assemble a new team has now started. We now move forward as one country and as one people.
Joining me now on the program is Kenyan journalist Abby Agina from Nairobi. Good to have you today on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Abby, so all of Kenya is celebrating today. Should we then assume that William Ruto was always a favorite to win the presidential election?
Well, so far we can report that from the main strongholds where the president-elect hails from, there's been sporadic celebrations. That is in Uasin Gishu, and formerly this is known as the Rift Valley area. We've seen celebrations in some of the counties as well, including Nakuru, Eldoret, and a host of other areas such as even in central Kenya, there have been serious celebrations where majority of the supporters came out in large just to declare their excitement, their joy. But the same was not replicated across the entire country, especially in Raila Odinga's strongholds, where we did see a sense of calm in the city of Kisumu, as well as Mombasa. But all this also coming in at a time when Kenyans have been put in suspense for the last couple of weeks, even as they waited to know the fate of the presidential election. So Ruto literally has been able, President-elect Ruto has been able to appeal to quite a number of the country in terms of cutting across in regards to his support base across the nation.
So what about, what's it about him that draws the people to him? Because we have even seen pictures from inside the Supreme Court of people celebrating following that announcement.
Well, the story of the hearts of many Kenyans. He is a son of a farmer who has risen through the ranks to become the country's most powerful man. And this is typical of a story of grace, from grass to grace. And this is an area that majority of Kenyans have been waiting to see happen in our political landscape. Remember, a good chunk of the leaders that we had have come from reputable family names that have been in the political scene. So that is one of the factors that endears President-elect Ruto to quite a majority of Kenyans, with his story of how he rose through the ranks to become Kenya's fifth president. And also, he has been championing for the youth to be integrated into running affairs of the national government. So he has been very likable to the youth population in the country. And of course, this will be giving him a lot of leverage even as he sits in office once he's sworn in come next week on Tuesday.
Right, so Raila Odinga's lawyer has also reacted to this, saying his camp will respect the ruling, but, you know, even though it does not accept it. Is this the end of the road for Mr. Odinga's attempt at becoming president?
Well, that's an interesting question there. It's never easy for us as journalists to say Raila has had his final bullet. Of course, age-wise, he's quite crossed the mark. He's heading to the 80 mark. And this defeat will indeed leave a sour taste in his supporters' backyard, as well as him as a pastor. It is the fifth time he has taken a stab at the presidency. And this may just be one of the sunset years for the opposition leader who has continued to be regarded as one of the key players when you look at Kenya's democratic space. He has also issued a statement saying that he will be giving his directions to his supporters. So it will be premature for me to say what will happen to his political career. Will he be going into retirement? Will he be finally picking a successor? All this will be coming out when he addresses the country come tomorrow.
Finally, Abiy, President-elect Ruto has promised to work with his challengers, Odinga inclusive. How easy will this be? And have they ever indicated interest in working with the upcoming government?
Well, the president-elect did indicate in his speech today that he extends an olive branch to the opposition where he's hoping to work closely with them. And remember, Raila Odinga and William Ruto are not strangers to each other. They worked together in some years back in 2007, where Raila was a prime minister and Ruto was a minister in the government which went down history as the Grand Coalition government. And of course, Raila has been very keen to see a united country. He is likely to work with the president-elect for the simple reason that the bigger issues facing Kenyans are greater than an individual. It will be an interesting turn of events, especially now that the Supreme Court has delivered its verdict, and Raila Odinga was banking on all hope that the Supreme Court would nullify this election. So, as we speak this evening, it will be an area of immense speculation. Will they also have another handshake? Of course, William Ruto, president-elect, has maintained that he is keen to serve the people of Kenya and, of course, unite the country and let bygones be bygones. But it's too early to tell, especially considering that the president-elect has a lot on his in tray as he settled into State House.
Right, thank you for an update on that. Kenyan journalist Abiy Akina joining us from Nairobi to take a look at this all-important subject matter.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the Directorate of Criminal Investigation says the second suspected wildlife and drug trafficker wanted in the United States has been extradited following his arrest in Meru County. Abdi Hussein Ahmed, otherwise known as Abu Khadi, who had $1 million bounty on his head, was apprehended at a rental room in Mawa, Meru County, following a tip-off from residents in the area. Milimani Chief Magistrate Roslyn Aganyo ordered the extradition, charging Ahmed for participating in a conspiracy to trafficking in rhinoceros horns and elephant ivory, both protected wildlife species valued at more than $7 million. The group is said to have smuggled between December 2012 through May 2019 approximately 190 kilograms of rhinoceros horns and at least 10 tons of elephant ivory from various countries to buyers in the United States and countries in Southeast Asia. They operated in Kenya, Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, Mozambique, Senegal, and Tanzania. UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths visited Baidoa in Bay region, the epicenter of the hunger crisis ripping through Somalia. Despite the immense suffering he has witnessed, he feared that the worst is yet to come for the people of Somalia. As famine looms and the drought worsens, 7.8 million people, nearly half of the country's estimated population, need humanitarian assistance. Hundreds of thousands of people are at imminent risk of death if we do not act immediately. Those were his words when he went through the area. He said, we can't allow this to continue, and yet we fear that the drought which has divided this country these last 4 seasons is going to get worse. What's happening in the Horn of Africa is a threat to a way of life which has sustained families and communities for generations. It's not just a lack of rain for 4 rainy seasons for many families. It's an end to the way they lived. We have to help them live again in any way possible.
Here in Somalia, that the worst is yet to come, and yet I can tell you right now is bad enough. There are people who have been in this camp for 8 to 9 years, and when we ask them about their future. First of all, they don't really understand the question. Survival is enough. But then when they do, they tell us, we don't have a future. We can't go home. We've been here for 8 years. There's violence where we came from. Our animals have been sold. What's happening in the Horn of Africa is a threat to a way of life which has sustained families and communities for generations. It's not just a lack of rain for 4 seasons. For many families, it's an end to the way they've lived. We have to help them live again in any way possible.
Coming up on Network Africa. The village boosting Egypt's flower industry. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Network Africa. The situation in Somalia will not get better, and it's not just the country that will continue to experience the current drought across the county. So are Ethiopia and Kenya. That's according to the United Nations. Country director for the Danish Refugee Council says the biggest challenge here is the drought. Most of the pans here have dried out, and that means water is a big challenge resulting from the lack of rain for the last 3 years and more, which has led to many animals dying, food insecurity, because most of the households are not able to get access to water. African countries are among the nations that are least to blame for global warming, accounting for less than 4% of global emissions of carbon dioxide. But they are also among countries that are most exposed to the climate impacts, such as worsening drought, floods and cyclones. Last week, African countries met in Libreville in Gabon for Africa Climate Week to agree on a common push to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Last week's meeting was one of a series of meetings ahead of the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, taking place from November the 6th to 18th. While families in parts of Somalia affected by conflict are receiving cash donations by the International Committee of the Red Cross to help them cope as the country battles drought and rising inflation. This emergency relief is the first in a series of monthly payments to support people pushed out of their homes by the severe drought.
Thanks to the International Committee of the Red Cross, about 150,000 families have already benefited from the mobile phone-based cash assistance plan. Each family was given $90 to cover the cost of food or other basic items through the program run by the ICRC. When Nadir Ahmed Adan received the grant, he says he used $50 to open a small shop and the rest to buy food for the family.
I left Bako region after losing my livestock. Because of the drought, the rains fell for 3 years, so the animals all died.
The drought has lasted for 4 consecutive rainy seasons, and its economic impact on the vulnerable communities is aggravated by the protracted armed conflict and rising food and fuel prices. Cash assistance aims to help the most vulnerable survive and to minimize their debt.
I transport from Bako to Belewene on credit. I paid back my debt to the driver after receiving money from ICRC.
With the next rainfall due in October, rural families stripped of their livelihoods continue to flee to towns, hoping to receive help from relatives and aid groups. To help people build resilience in the face of the worsening impact of climate shocks, agricultural cooperatives are being supported with drought-resistant seeds, farming tools, training and cash for fuel needed to irrigate.
We do this to keep the farming business going, despite the drought.
The ICRC is distributing cash assistance to people in conflict-affected parts of Somalia, as well as rehabilitating boreholes and wells. The agency also supports primary health care services.
Well, the French research vessel Tara, which aims to study marine microorganisms and their key role in the ocean ecosystem, has dropped its anchor in Senegal before it returns to Europe. The mission also aims to educate and raise awareness of ocean issues among the general public during its stopovers. With 6 sailors and a team of several scientists of various nationalities, the mission took samples to understand the poorly known functioning of microorganisms largely invisible to the naked eye, but nevertheless essential, and their interactions with the climate and pollution. During the African part of the mission, which involved 42 research institutes from all over the world, special attention was paid to rivers such as the Congo or the Gambia and their influence on biodiversity and pollution by microplastics. At least 3 persons have died from floods caused by heavy rains in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. The tragedy took place in Cambérène, more precisely in Yeumbeul North, in the department of Keur Massar, Dakar. Commiserating with the victims, President Macky Sall said a delegation was dispatched to the families of the 3 people swept away by the latest rains. The center of Dakar had already been severely affected by these floods on August the 5th, killing 1 person and triggering the disaster relief Plano-Rescue plan. Stormwater management and climate change adaptation projects. Flooding caused by torrential rain is common at this time of the year across West Africa. Mali's coup leader and the leader of Burkina Faso's military junta have met in the Malian capital, Bamako, to discuss bilateral cooperation. Colonel Assimi Goïta welcomed visiting Burkinabe leader, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. The visit coincided with the release of 3 Ivorian female soldiers, part of a group of 49 Ivorian military detained in Mali since July. After Mali, the Burkinabe leader travels to Ivory Coast as tensions grow between the 2 countries. And the village of Shubra Belula on the Nile Delta is at the heart of the jasmine industry in Egypt, which along with India is one of the world's top 2 producers. But the trade has been hit by disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, dampening demand and straining supply chains.
In fields outside the village of Shubra Belula, workers walk along rows of bushes in the relative cool of the night and early morning, using head torches to pick flowers by hand into baskets. The flowers are processed nearby to extract a concentrate known as absolute, which is exported to Europe and elsewhere for use in perfume.
Jasmine has a special way of cultivation. You can only pick jasmine early in the morning, around, say, 1 a.m. But when it becomes hot, you cannot pick it, and it won't be good when you collect it. So early in the morning is the best time to do it.
But the trade has been hit by disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, dampening demand and straining supply chains.
The Russian-Ukrainian war has also affected our distribution because Russia used to take a good portion of our production. It's also affecting people who are afraid and are not buying what they deem as unnecessary or luxurious, like fragrances.
High temperatures this summer have also highlighted a potential risk from climate change on the fragile jasmine flower. The flowers need to be harvested before the sun comes up and the jasmine dries out in the heat.
Well, that's it on Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.